He's back from the road, although he's probably still on the road. How about it for politics with Michael Shure? He has forgotten more about politics than most will ever know. There you are with the fish behind you. Where are you, sir?
Because I'm in Pensacola,
Florida, everybody. Come on. Albert, how could you know that and not have him join us in Friday Fabulous Florida?
Albert, thank you.
I don't blame you. I don't know, frankly, if Albert knew exactly where I was. So, in fairness to Albert.
All right, I retract that, Albert.
I would love to get Albert in trouble, obviously, but I don't think
I misspoke.
I misspoke.
All right, now, Michael.
By the way, one more Florida thing. Did you know that, and you probably did because you're experts at this stuff, did you know that you can put in Florida man and your birthday, and you can find out? Yes, you did. Okay, that's all.
No, we know it's great though. No, it's a notable fact, and I like it. You pointed out. No, it's not. I'm nodding that. Yes, it's good. It's very good.
It's good. All right.
Look, there's a lot coming down this week. The border has successfully leapt to the front of every digital offering of a major news organization. It seems to, in every poll now, show up as the number one concern. I think personally that might be the political salesmanship with which the border crisis has been played. Now you have both the president and the wannabe president, Donald Trump, wannabe president again, at the border. I wonder if you can speak to the issue and how they're both handling it. And of course, there's the derailing of the bipartisan bill at the border bill. So you've got all of that. Give us a sense of that.
The derailing of that bill is part of what Biden's going to use now. And we've talked about that in this space for a while, is that the president has not really been campaigning, and now that has begun. And today, the White House hasn't announced, but sources close to the White House have shared with different news organizations that there's going to be humanitarian airdrop of aid to those in Gaza. And this is all responsive stuff that someone running for president does, even if they are president, at a time when it can get the most public notice. Clearly, their pollsters are saying we have to do more in Gaza. We have to not abandon Israel, but we have to make sure that we find a middle ground. And then on the other side, at the border, what Trump's position is on the border. So if you're the president, you go in and you blame the Republicans for derailing a House bill that many Republicans did want. And you say that they can complain all they want, but when it comes to solutions, they don't do any. And there's a blueprint for that in Biden's past, which is healthcare, right? I mean, Obamacare was there for a very long time. They asked the Republicans in Congress to respond to that, and they never did. They never came up with their own plan. So that's a little bit of what has worked in the past at times when Joe Biden's been intimately involved, and that's what he's doing now.
The way in which they both speak of the border was very distinctively different and quite on brand. Albert, do you have that stuff? Would you mind? Can you rally it? I mean, essentially, Biden saying, "Hey, Donald Trump, let's stop with the politics and let's actually get together on this bill that we've already gotten together on. Here it is. Give it a look, everybody."
They're coming from jails, and they're coming from prisons, and they're coming from mental institutions, and they're coming from insane asylums, and they're terrorists. They're being let into our country.
So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together. You know, and I know, it's the toughest, most efficient, most effective border security bill this country has ever seen. So instead of playing politics with the issue, why don't we just get together and get it done?
They're coming.
No, I mean, you see there right. Okay.
And what's the president doing? And I'm not being cynical. I'm being practical. He's playing politics with it because they're both politicians, and there's nothing wrong with playing politics when you want to either hold the White House or win the White House. So what the president's doing is saying we get things done. You know, politics is the art of the possible, it's been said, and we get things done through politics. And we had something that you persuaded members of your own party in the extreme right not to do because it would make you look better. Don't do that. Don't play with people's lives and this problem. And it's exacerbated also by Trump, saying things as he wants to do that aren't true. These people are not, it's not like there's this rush of people coming from mental institutions and coming from prisons. Yeah, I mean, do some bad people get in? Yes, but most of the crime that happens in America is perpetrated by Americans, people who were born here, not people who have come across the border recently. So again, it's playing politics to what Trump wants to do, which is scare America to death, and what Biden claims to want to do, which is to make the problem better and to work across the aisles, and that's his style.
The messaging about the border and what you just said, you said something super important, which is associated with this message that there, the crime doers, the evildoers, the badness is coming from south of the border. It's coming with immigrants. That's a messaging that Trump has continued, and it lands with a lot of people. In polling, Michael, isn't it borne out that people still have this sort of misshapen view of this issue?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump's ascent to power was based on fear of other, whether it was the Muslim ban, whether it was criminals, whether it was libs and the woke people before we knew what the word woke was. That was his currency politically, is to rile up a latent part of the body politic to come out and start voting for him, people who had been silent before, and he emboldened them, and then he won. So I think he's going back to that playbook here by saying everyone who's coming across is a criminal, right? Well, okay, you can say they're a criminal for crossing the border, but he's saying they were criminals before they crossed the border, and that it's all a bad element, and the people that adhere to what he believes, they're going to believe anything he says. And if he says they're all bad, then they're all bad. If they're all other, then they're all bad to them.
I'll ding latent. Yeah.
Oh, come on, Mark.
Strong. Now, the other questions about politics relate to the momentum that's associated with Trump, with the GOP, and with the incumbent Biden. I feel like Biden takes a lot of incoming fire from his own party too. The he's too old stuff. I wonder if you could just kind of, you haven't been there in a couple of weeks. Kind of build a framework for us to understand what's happening in that sphere.
Well, I think look, they both take incoming from their own party. It's not that Biden's, it's unusual for a sitting president to take incoming from their own party. It's not on policy. It's not on, the success or failure. It's based entirely on, is he too old to be president, which is a normal conversation that Americans should have, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. But when one's 81 and one's 77, not a great difference, right? But what I do think is that, and as you've seen Donald Trump sort of emerge as the candidate, you're going to start seeing the president turn into a candidate more than he has. And I think you've seen that in the recent, 7 to 10 days, since certainly South Carolina, which hasn't been 7 to 10 days, but it was very recent. You're going into Super Tuesday. I think that the more that Donald Trump is clearly the candidate, and we know he is, but then the Democratic Party, the DNC, and the Biden campaign are going to spend all the money and all their time going after him. And you talk about momentum, and I think it's a really important thing you bring up, Mark. I mean, it's now it just turned into March, the election's in November. There are going to be momentum shifts. There are going to be things that we don't know that are going to happen that have already happened, right? I mean, Jimmy Carter could die and Joe Biden could give an amazing eulogy, and the country thinks, oh my God, Joe Biden's fine and this has happened. Things we can't even predict that could happen. Donald Trump could get in trouble. Donald Trump could seize on an issue that turns into the issue of this campaign and obliterates Biden. So what I'm trying to say is that there are momentum shifts. And I think right now you're starting to see the game plan, and you're starting to see them come into position as the candidates of their party. And even as we've discussed ad nauseum and people are talking about in the news every day, even that could change. So this is a very unusual election in that regard alone.
Yeah, and you've also pointed out that the real election campaigning on the part of the Democrats and Biden is just beginning, or still a ways off, actually, is what you've been saying in the months that leading up. I mean, it may be in all of our minds going on all the time, but the real firepower is being saved, in effect.
Exactly. That's so true what you're saying, because you have people, you have newspapers and news outlets, and from the most mainstream to the most streaming and online, and weekly and scurrilous, whatever it is. Everybody's been covering this election already. The only thing that hasn't happened is one of the candidates hasn't been running yet. And I think as the president begins to run, then these things start to matter, and then there's a focus, and then you can pay attention to what's going on a little bit more. It's not a fault of people like me, who have been covering an election that nobody's paying attention to, and it's just the sort of natural human nature is, until it's a real race, people don't pay as close attention. And now that that's happening, you're going to start seeing it in a different light.
I want to ask you about the Supreme Court in a second, but first, I don't want you to think it's just me, because this is Tom, keeper of the ding. Scurrilous is a ding word. Now, I want to get to the Supreme Court, and this is interesting as well, and this, I think, is something that is spoken of but will never happen, but nonetheless, I'm going to... Biden can't expand the Supreme Court. It takes Congress to do that. There's talk of the Supreme Court, how it's really now just rigged. It's a bunch of Trumpies in strong enough numbers. You don't need many, right? To swing all of these decisions, to delay court judgments, to allow Donald Trump to ascend to power. It's really Bush v. Gore, but instead of it being one fell swoop of Bush v. Gore, it's a slow creep of Bush v. Gore and a stealing of an election.
Okay, I don't agree with that. I don't agree that it is Bush v. Gore, because Bush v. Gore was unprecedented, and it was something that they decided an election in one moment. They actually decided the election.
Right.
A conservative court is certainly going to tilt an election when it comes to the issues that they're doing right now. Yes, could they have passed on taking this most recent case? Sure, they could have, but they decided not to. And legal precedent, in a way, demands that. This is a real question. What does a president have immunity? I mean, that is forgetting what side you're on, it's an interesting legal question as to whether or not a president has immunity. A former president has immunity. A candidate would have immunity. And I think that's something that some of the smarter people on the court, I mean, they're all smart in their own way, but some of the sort of more intellectual people on the court probably thought this is something that's worth our hearing. It still helps Donald Trump, there's no question, but I wouldn't equate it with Bush v. Gore. I think the fact that Donald Trump's going to get some favorable rulings is because we have a court that gives people the right to do that. And I don't have a problem with that, really. I'm you could be upset about it, but there's reason to think that it wasn't a terrible thing to do. But you have a conservative court, and when you have a conservative president who puts on conservative justices and a conservative, Congress that does this sort of supports the same thing, and a Senate that approves conservative judges, that's what's going to happen. And this is why you do that. So when your day comes, when the rainy day comes, they're your umbrella.
Well, I mean, to back you up, there actually is. We had this with David Katz yesterday. For those who missed it, you should go back and listen. He points to this Nixon versus Fitzgerald case, in which essentially, just to summarize, President Nixon at the time was granted immunity from civil prosecution, from prosecution of a government official, which Nixon obviously was as president, performing discretionary functions. It then allows you, to Michael's point, to treat this as a serious legal inquiry as opposed to just a jihad politically. So, right. To be fair to that argument, there is that. The court, you'd confess, Michael, it's a bad look these days for them.
Yeah, on many scores. I mean, I think the Clarence Thomas, Ginny Thomas stuff to begin with gives them a bad look that is indelible. Like there's nothing that can take that away. But they also are the Supreme Court, so they're going to, they have a job to do. And whether you're, if you're a liberal, you can't stand this court. It's 6-3 against you, 5-4 at the very worst, as we've seen some of the justices sort of come to the middle in the absence of Anthony Kennedy on some cases, but not in general. But this is a conservative court, and will be remembered as a conservative court. So it's going to be favorable to conservative causes.
The last thing I'll say about the Supreme Court is that 3 justices on this court, Barrett, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, they were all part of Bush v. Gore. They were lawyers back then, arguing for the GOP and helped seize that election for George Bush. So I can't get that out of my memory.
Well, I mean, it's a president. So the Bush v. Gore is our most recent memory about presidential power and who gets to even be president, right? But I don't think it's the exact same thing. I think that there's a way of looking at that decision, how quickly it happened, how understudied it was, and how decisive it was, and how it changed the course of history in America. So that is a very different case than I think hearing about presidential immunity. I know what you're saying. A lot of the same players are there. They're always going to be there. I mean, conservative people who end up being conservative justices on the Supreme Court have a long history of case law. There are people right now working on cases, and one day they're going to be on the bench, and we're going to look and say, oh, but they were working on the immunity case against Trump. Well, that's just how you get to the Supreme Court, is working on these sorts of cases. I'm not dismissing what you're saying at all, but I don't think the two cases are the same.
Hunter Biden faced questions, as you know, behind closed doors. They talked about his business dealings, his drug abuse. I mean, it was really a chance to fry Hunter Biden. This House Oversight Committee didn't get any, from what we can see, blockbuster testimony from all of this, right? It was
I mean, the teeth have really dulled on that committee so far. I think with that one witness who the FBI indicted for perjury, for lying about testimony and lying about evidence, I think that from there, the momentum, the wheels started coming off a little bit. They said they're going to keep doing it. The other problem you have is that you have Republicans on the Hill who are now at each other again, like we saw with Kevin McCarthy, like we saw, with the election of Mike Johnson on the whatever umpteenth ballot it was. Maybe it was a little longer, a little shorter than that. But even now, Patrick McHenry, who you remember was the interim speaker, the speaker pro tem between McCarthy and Johnson, he's saying that he doesn't like the way Johnson's working. So all of the deputies of Kevin McCarthy are backing McHenry now. So the division there means that these kind of cases are going to have a very difficult time going forward. They're doing a lot of distraction. They impeached Alejandro Mayorkas, and the Senate, it's not even going to take it up because they know where it's going to go. So they're going to have to eventually, but they're putting it off and putting it off. There's a real fractured Republican presence in the House, and I think that speaks. I think that helps Hunter Biden, we should say. But again, Hunter Biden might be helping Hunter Biden too.
Yeah, I mean, he was absolutely unequivocal about the fact that his dad, Joe Biden, the president, got no money from any of his businesses at any time, and they don't have any evidence that Biden did get any money. And as
right.
you suggested, go ahead.
No, the mere fact that he's doing interviews like that means that they really want to get ahead of this, and they feel like they have some kind of momentum in this case too.
Yeah, it is effed up, though, isn't it, Michael Shure, that people can, and I'll wrap up with you. I know you have stuff to do. You're out there on the road, but it is effed up that it is legal for, but yet it's the way society is set up that if you know somebody who is connected, then people want to do business with you because you can help get them to the person who's connected. It's true with Biden. It's true in Hollywood. It's true so many different places. So that's how this Burisma thing happens.
Totally. I mean, we now have something called Nepo baby as a term, a phrase in the vernacular. I mean, Nepo baby is exactly that. Is Hunter Biden a Nepo baby? Yes, but you don't even have to. When your father is Joe Biden, he's been vice president, he's been a senator for 30 years, he's run for president for 3 times. You don't even have to say anything. Your last name is your last name, whether you want it to be or not, right? I mean, so even without forcing it upon people, if people know that, oh, it's exciting to do that. If you were, if you knew you could have, open a restaurant with Jim Jagger, who was Mick's brother, you'd be like, okay, I have some investors. Getting Jim Jagger involved would be kind of cool. Never met Jim, but it would be helpful to get people into my restaurant. It's that kind of a thing. And so how you use it, of course, it can be brought into question. But when your last name's Biden, like your last name's Kennedy or your last name's Bush, it's going to open doors without you even pushing them.
Where are you then? You're at rallies. These are Trump rallies.
I'm headed to Richmond, Virginia, for a Trump rally tomorrow. So I'll be talking to Trump voters outside, asking them how Black History Month impacted them. And,
I have to say, the stuff you've done is super viral. It's really gone all over the place. I've seen it everywhere in feeds and of all sorts on TYT. you've done it for so long. I leave you with this question. Trump rally after Trump rally. Nikki Haley is your only real brief respite from Trump rally after Trump rally. Are you beginning to understand the MAGA dream, Michael Shure?
Yes, I've sipped the flavor aid because it wasn't Kool-Aid in Guyana, by the way. No,
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, all right.
there's never, I think just very quickly, I spend most of my time outside of these rallies. Last week in Columbia, South Carolina, I decided I hadn't been inside for a while. I was going to go inside. We went in when Donald Trump was speaking to the Federation of Black Conservatives, and it was their honors, and 440 people from around the country in Columbia, and Trump spoke to them. And again, you heard the same refrains and the same sort of base language and all of the things that attracts the people that are attracted to Donald Trump. You saw it in action. There's not a lot that's changed even since 2015. And this is going to be what he tries to do. And whether or not it works or whether or not it's playing to just the same crowd, we'll see.
It worked last time, but yeah, as you say, he's he's playing
it didn't
the
work
hits.
The next time. It didn't work the next time, though.
Didn't work the next time. You're right. Yeah. Well, I like that you're going inside the rallies, but I want to say that's how it starts, Michael Shure. That you start, well, I've been outside. I'm going to go inside. And
I'll only be outside tomorrow, I promise.
Before you know it, you're wearing a red hat and gold shoes. That's all I have to say. Michael Shure, everybody.
As long as it's a 49ers hat, I'm fine.
Thanks, pal. Appreciate it. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.